Why is it that some people look like they have absolutely no idea what they are doing on YouTube, seemingly breaking all the rules and still growing an audience, while you are trying to do everything right, studying your analytics, taking courses, learning as much as you can, and are barely getting views and definitely not getting as many conversions from views into clients as you want? Well, it's your lucky day because honestly, those people that look like a hot mess and growing their channel are unconsciously doing exactly what works. Now, are they making money? Maybe, maybe not, because that actually requires conscious choice and effort. But this video today is a full-on course walking you through what works for building trust and attention with YouTube so that you can build a business with it. And full disclosure, I was planning on selling this course. So it's a legit course, but then I changed my mind because if I'm honest, my mentor gave me a little smackdown saying I was off on a shiny object adventure and I need to get my head back in the focus game. And marketing this course would steal time and attention away from my main focus right now, which is my paid membership. Which, by the way, if you want access to all of the courses I create or have ever created and will create, they live inside my Skool community. So you could get this with the workbook and all the lessons and everything in there if you were interested. But anyway, I digress. So if you are ready to get paid to speak on YouTube, ready to build a sustainable, soul-aligned business that actually makes you money without a massive audience, without going viral, without burning out, and without pretending to be someone you're not, I want you to stick around because I have just uploaded the entire course into this one video. And since it's a course, there are lessons and modules and mini exercises inside. So if you want the workbook that goes along with this course, there is a link below this video for you to grab that because success is on the other side of taking action. And having that workbook printed out in front of you while you're working through this video will get you where you want to go so much faster than passively just viewing it. So grab a coffee, a matcha, water, tea, whatever you like to drink, and get ready to focus and grow your channel and business with your authentic voice. So you can stop staring at all those other channels, those hot mess channels that are growing, and start watching your own grow too. So let's do this. See you on the inside. I want to warmly welcome you to Getting Paid to Speak for coaches and course creators that want to build a YouTube channel that attracts clients, not just attention. I'm so glad you're here, and I genuinely mean that. Not in the way that people say it at the beginning of every course. I mean it because the fact that you're here tells me something about you. It tells me you're done playing small. You're done creating content that feels like a watered down version of what you actually want to say, and you're ready to build something real. But before we jump in, I want to tell you something about how this course is structured because it does matter. We're starting with you, not your niche, not your content strategy, not your posting schedule, you. And I know that might feel slow. I know part of you wants to skip ahead to the tactics, the strategy, the templates, the 30-day plan, and we will get there. That's module 5, and it's going to be incredibly practical. But here's what I've learned from building my own business and YouTube and helping hundreds of coaches to do the same. Everything, and I mean everything, flows from clarity about who you are. When that's fuzzy, your content is fuzzy. When your content is fuzzy, your ideal client scrolls past. And when your ideal client scrolls past you, you make no money. No matter how consistent you are, no matter how good your thumbnails are, no matter how well you understand the algorithm. I've lived this, and I had early success on YouTube, real success, significant revenue from a small channel. And then I made the mistake of trying to look like what I thought an expert was supposed to look like because I had received so much success. And so I moved away from my own voice and everything quietly fell apart. So coming back to who I actually am has been the most important and most profitable thing I've ever done in this business. So module 1, this is where we're going to figure out who you actually are, beyond your credentials, beyond your niche label, beyond the version of you that you've been presenting on camera, because you thought that was what people wanted to see. But this is where it gets real. We are going to do the work inside this course that makes you magnetic. So let's get to it, and I'll see you in lesson 1. Okay, so welcome to lesson 1. I want to start this lesson with a question that sounds simple, but almost nobody has a real answer to. Who are you? Not what do you do, not what's your niche, not what are your credentials or your certifications or how many years of experience you have. Who are you. Because here's what I see constantly with coaches and consultants who are struggling to get friction on YouTube. They introduce themselves by their role. I am a business coach. I am a life coach. I am a leadership consultant. And then they create content that matches that label. Helpful, professional, informative, and completely forgettable. Not because they're not good at what they're doing. They often are exceptional at what they do, but because they're presenting a role, not a person. And people don't fall in love with roles. They don't binge watch roles. They don't buy from roles. They connect with people. More specifically, your heart, your unique expression, your perspectives, your opinions, and your lived experience. So let me draw a distinction that I want you to carry with you throughout this entire course. Your credentials are your CV. Your identity is your power. That is what makes you magnetic. Your credentials tell people you're qualified. Your identity makes people choose you over everyone else who is equally qualified. In a world where there are thousands of coaches, consultants, course creators, and everything creating content every single day, your credentials are just what get you in the room. Your identity is your competitive advantage. And here's the thing about identity. It's not invented. It's not crafted in a branding session or designed by a marketing consultant. It's already there. It's you. It's made up of everything you've lived through, everything you've fought for, everything you've learned the hard way, and the particular way you see the world that nobody else sees in quite the same way. Your job is not to create your identity. Your job is to uncover it and then be brave enough to bring it into the camera with you. So how do we do that? I want to take you through what I call the 3 chapters exercise. And I want you to actually do this exercise, not just listen to me explain it. So pause this lesson and write it down, because what comes up for you here is going to inform everything else in this course. So here's the premise. You are here coaching, consulting, doing the work you do for a reason, not just because you got a qualification, because something happened, a series of things usually, experiences that shaped how you see the world, that gave you a perspective other people don't have, that made you understand something at a depth that only lived experience can give you. Those experiences are your 3 chapters. Chapter 1 is usually the struggle or the turning point, the thing you went through that first connected you to the work you do now. Maybe it was your own transformation. Maybe it was watching someone you loved go through something and feeling helpless. Maybe it was a moment of complete failure that taught you something invaluable. Whatever it is, this is the experience that planted the seed for what you do. Chapter 2 is the journey. What you did with that experience, how you moved through it, what you learned from it, built something from it, the messy middle where you figured things out. Chapter 3 is the gift, what that journey gave you, the insight, the perspective, the specific way of seeing and helping that you now bring to your clients. This is where your superpower lives, and we're going to go deep on that in the next lesson. Now, here's why this matters for your YouTube channel specifically. Your 3 chapters are not your backstory in the sense of something you mention once on an about page and then never reference again. They are the source of your most compelling content, because every time you teach something on camera, every insight, every framework, every piece of advice, it lands differently when your audience understands where it came from. When they know you didn't just read this in a book, you lived it. That's what creates that feeling that your viewer describes when they say something like, it feels like she's talking directly to me, or I don't know how, but she just gets it. It's not magic, it's specificity. It's the difference between here's what the research says about mindset, and here's what I learned about mindset the year my business collapsed and I had to rebuild from nothing. One of those is information. The other is a reason to trust you. And trust is what sells. So before we move to the workbook exercise, I want to address something that comes up for almost every coach I work with at this point in the conversation. The fear that your story isn't interesting enough or relevant enough, or that sharing it will make you look weak rather than credible, or weak rather than strong. I hear this constantly, and I want to be direct about it. The coaches that are quietly killing it on YouTube, building real audiences, getting real clients, making real money, are almost universally the ones who are willing to be specific and real about who they are and where they came from. Not because audiences want drama or trauma, because audiences want to know that the person they're considering trusting and potentially investing significant money in is a real human being who has actually been somewhere. Your story doesn't have to be dramatic, it has to be true. And true, told specifically, is always more powerful than polished. Okay, so here's your workbook exercise for this lesson. I want you to write your 3 chapters, give yourself 20 minutes, and don't edit yourself while you write, just to get it out. For each chapter, answer these questions. What happened? And then describe it simply and specifically, not the whole story, just the essence of it. What did it cost you or teach you? What was hard about it? Or what did you learn that you couldn't have learned any other way? And what do you now see or understand on the other side because of it? When you've written all three, read them back and ask yourself, which part of this am I keeping off camera? Which part am I editing out because I think they make me look less expert or less credible? Those parts, the ones you're hiding, are almost certainly your most powerful content. So I will see you in lesson 2, where we're going to take everything that comes up in this exercise and use it to identify your specific superpower, the thing you do or see or communicate that nobody else does quite like you. Okay, welcome back to lesson 2. If I asked you right now, what is your superpower? What would you say? Most coaches either go blank or they give me something vague like I help people reach their potential. Or they list a set of skills that sounds more like a job description than a superpower. And I get it, because the thing about your superpower is that it almost never feels special to you. It feels obvious. It feels like the thing you've always done, the way you've always thought, the thing people thank you for so regularly that you've started to assume everyone can do what you do. They can't, though. And that's the paradox of natural genius. The thing that comes most easily to you, the thing that feels so intuitive you barely notice yourself doing it, those are almost always the things your clients find most extraordinary and most transformative. And they are almost always the things you are most likely to undervalue, undercharge for, and underpromote. So in this lesson, we're going to find yours. And then we're going to learn how to put it at the center of everything: your content, your offer, your on-camera presence, etc. Let me first make a distinction between a skill and a superpower, though, because that's important, because they're not the same thing. A skill is something you've learned, something you've developed through study, practice, training, repetition, right? Skills are valuable. Skills are part of what makes you good at your work. But skills can be learned by anyone willing to put the time and effort into it. They're not a differentiator for you. A superpower is something more intrinsic than that. It's a way of thinking, seeing, communicating, or connecting that is rooted in who you are rather than what you learned. It's the specific lens through which you see the world. It's the particular way you explain things that makes people say, nobody's ever put it like that before. It's what your client describes when they try to explain to their friends why they hired you specifically and not someone else. So let me give you some examples of what a superpower can look like. For some coaches, it's a diagnostic gift, the ability to hear someone describe their situation and within minutes identify the one thing that is actually causing all other problems. Everyone else is treating the symptoms, but you go straight to the root. For others, it's a translation gift, the ability to take complex, abstract ideas and make them feel simple, accessible, and immediately actionable. People walk away from your content feeling capable in a way that they didn't before they found you. For others, it's a pattern recognition gift. You've worked with enough people and seen enough situations that you can immediately see where this is going, what's really happening, and what needs to happen next. Your clients feel deeply seen because you understood their situation faster than they could explain it. For others, it's an energetic gift, something about your presence, your directness, your warmth, your particular quality of attention that makes people feel safe or makes them feel connected to you enough to be honest and brave enough to change. And you can't fully explain it, and neither can they, but they keep coming back because of that feeling. And none of these are on a CV. None of them came from a certification. They came from you, from the combination of your lived experience, your natural wiring, and the work you've been doing long enough to develop genuine mastery. So how do you find yours? The most reliable way I've found is what I call the feedback audit. And it's simple. Think about the feedback you receive most consistently from your clients. Not the general, that was great, thank you feedback, the specific feedback, the comments that are precise enough that you remember them, the messages that made you stop and think, the moments when someone described what you gave them in a way that surprised you. What words did they use? What did they say you did that nobody else has done for them before? What do they say changed for them specifically because of the way you approached the problem? If you haven't gotten enough client feedback to draw from yet, do the exercise with some peers or mentors or colleagues even, or friends. What do people who know your work well say about how you think or how you operate? Write down every phrase that comes up more than once in those conversations, because repetition is the signal. If 3 different clients in 3 different months have said the same version of, you have this way of cutting through the noise and getting to exactly what matters, that's your superpower. Now, here's where this connects directly to your YouTube channel. Your superpower is the lens through which all of your content should be created and delivered. It's what makes your videos on a topic that 100 other people are also making videos about feel different because you're not just covering the topic, you're covering it through the filter of your particular genius. When your superpower is visible in your content, when it's not hidden behind generic advice and professional language, but actually present, doing the thing, your ideal client recognizes it. They can't always name it or what they're responding to, but they feel it. And it's the reason they subscribe, come back, and eventually buy. This also means that one of the most powerful things you can do on YouTube is make your superpower explicit. Name it, talk about it, not in an arrogant, here's why I'm amazing way, but in a specific, useful, here's what I bring to the table way. Like, this is how I can help you way. Because your ideal client is not just looking for someone who covers your topics, they're looking for someone who covers it in the way that works for them. So your superpower is how they know that person is you. So here's your workbook exercise. Part 1, write down every piece of specific feedback you've received from clients, peers, or mentors that describe how you work, how you think, or what you gave them. Look for the patterns that I mentioned. What gets said repeatedly? Part 2, complete this sentence as many ways as you can. My clients say that I have a way of, and write at least 5 completions without editing it yourself. Part 3, from all the stuff that comes up, write your superpower statement. 1 or 2 sentences. Start with, my superpower is, and describe it in plain language. Not jargon, not a job title, just truth of what you bring that others don't in quite the same way. And keep this statement somewhere visible. We're going to use it in your content, your offer, your framing, and your on-camera presence throughout the rest of this course. Lesson 3 is where things get interesting, and for some of you, a little uncomfortable. We're going to talk about your truth, your real opinions, the things you believe about your industry that you've been keeping off camera. And I'm going to show you exactly why those things, the ones that feel too edgy or too specific or too diverse or too bold to say out loud, are the most important content you will ever make. I want to start this lesson by asking you to think about the last piece of content you consumed, a video, a podcast, an email, that genuinely stopped you, that made you think, yes, exactly that, or maybe even, I've never heard anyone say it like that before, that made you want to share it or save it or write the creator a message. So do you have one of those in mind? Okay, great. Now tell me, was that piece of content safe? Was it the kind of thing that anyone in the space could have said, delivered in a way that nobody could reasonably object to? I bet not. I bet it had a point of view, a real one, the kind that comes from someone who has actually thought deeply about something and arrived at a conclusion that is specifically theirs, not just a repackaging of what everyone else is saying in the space or AI is saying. That's what we're building in this lesson. Your point of view, your truth, the specific, sometimes uncomfortable, often counterintuitive things you actually believe about your field, and that you have, until now, probably been keeping mostly off camera. So let me tell you why this matters so much for coaches and consultants specifically. In almost every coaching and consulting niche, there is an enormous amount of content. Life coaching, business coaching, health coaching, leadership consulting, these spaces are saturated with people creating videos, writing emails, showing up on social media daily. And the vast majority of that content sounds the same. Not because the people creating it are the same, but because they are trying to appeal to everyone, which means they're all saying the safest, most broadly agreeable version of their message. Nobody stands out, nobody magnetizes, and nobody converts, at least not at the rate they should or could. The coaches that break through that noise are not the ones with the best production or the biggest budget or the most posting frequency. They're the ones who have something to say, a genuine perspective, a take that is distinctly theirs, a willingness to say, hey, here's what I actually think, and I understand if you disagree with me, but this is where I stand. That's what creates a following, not just an audience, a following. People who come back because of you specifically, not just because of the topic you cover. Now, I want to address something directly because it always comes up here. Having a point of view is not the same as being controversial for the sake of it. I'm not asking you to be provocative or divisive or manufacture drama just to get attention. I'm asking you to be honest. The difference between manufactured controversy and genuine point of view is this. Manufactured controversy is designed to create a reaction. A genuine point of view is what you actually believe, regardless of who agrees or disagrees. One feels cheap even when it works. The other feels like integrity, and it attracts people who share your values, which means it attracts your actual ideal clients. So how do you find your genuine point of view? I want to take you through what I call the unpopular opinion exercise. And I want to be clear, by unpopular, I don't mean shocking. I mean the thing that you believe about your field that are not the mainstream views. The things that when you say them at a dinner party with other people in your industry, someone pushes back. The things that your clients thank you for saying because nobody else has been willing to say it to them directly. Here are some prompts to get you started. What does everyone in your industry say that you privately think is wrong, incomplete, or actively unhelpful? Or what do you believe your ideal clients need to hear that most coaches in your space are too polite or too careful to say? What is the standard advice in your niche that you've watched fail repeatedly, and what do you believe actually works instead? Or what would you say to your ideal client if you knew they couldn't be offended and you didn't need to worry about losing them? What do you believe about success or transformation or the work you do that feels almost too simple or too direct to be a popular opinion? Write down whatever comes up and don't filter it. Don't worry about whether it's appropriate for a video. Just get it out, because inside those answers is your content gold. Inside those answers is the version of your work that people will watch, share, remember, and buy from. So let me give you an example from my own world. One of the things I genuinely believe and say directly and repeatedly on my channel is that most coaches are failing on YouTube, not because they need a better strategy, but because they haven't decided to be themselves yet. That they are creating a performance of expertise rather than actually showing up as themselves. That safe content is not a strategy, it's a fear response. And that's not what most YouTube growth advice sounds like. Most YouTube growth advice sounds like it's about your thumbnails or your titles and posting schedules. And I'm out here saying the real problem is an identity problem, and no amount of tactical improvements or strategies will fix it. And some people will hear that and immediately move on because it's not what they were looking for. But the people it lands for, they feel seen in a way that nothing else in the space has made them feel. And those are the people who become my clients every single time. That's what your truth does. It repels the wrong people and magnetizes the right ones. And in a world where you're building a business, not a popularity contest, that is exactly what you want to do. But now let's talk about how to actually use your truth in your content, because having an opinion is one thing, and knowing how to put that on camera in your content effectively is another. The most powerful format for truth-led content is what I think of as a reframe. You take something your audience believes or has been told that you believe is wrong or incomplete. You name it clearly and specifically so they recognize it. You validate why they believe it, because they were told it, or because it seems logical, or because everyone else is saying it, and then you offer the shift, your perspective, the paradigm shift, the thing you actually believe explained in a way that which makes their world make more sense than it did before. The structure is, here's what you've been told, here's why it doesn't work, here's what I believe instead. This is the architecture of some of the most engaging content on YouTube, and it's built entirely on having a real point of view. So here's your workbook exercise for this lesson. Part 1 is to write your 5 unpopular opinions. Give yourself 10 minutes and don't edit. Use the prompts I gave you and just write. Part 2, for each one, write 2 or 3 sentences explaining why you believe it's different. Not just the opinion, but the reasoning, the experience, the evidence that you bring to the table for this conclusion. Part 3, choose the one that feels most true and most important to you, the one that makes you feel slightly nervous to say out loud, which is usually the sign that it matters, and write a video using that reframe structure. Here's what people believe, here's why it's not working, here's what I believe instead. That video idea, that's your first truth-led video. We're going to script it properly in Module 5, but I want you to have it in your hands now so you can feel what it's like to have content that actually is yours. That's the end of Module 1. You now know who you are, what your superpower is, and what you genuinely stand for. That is more than most coaches ever get clear on, and you've done it in 3 lessons. In Module 2, we're going to talk about what you do with all of this, because knowing it is one thing. Actually showing up on camera and saying it fully without shrinking, without disclaimers or backpedaling or apologies, is the work we will tackle next. Welcome to Module 2. If Module 1 was about finding out about who you are, this module is about doing something with that, about actually showing up with it on camera, out loud, without shrinking it down into something safe and palatable and forgettable. And I want to be honest with you before we start. This is the module where people want to skip ahead. They've done the inner work of Module 1. They feel good about it. They're ready to talk about their audience and their offer and their content plan. The tactical stuff feels more comfortable, more doable, less exposed. But here's what I know from working with coaches and consultants at every level of business, from people just starting out to people with multi-six figures already behind them. The tactics are not the problem. The willingness to actually be seen is the problem. You have the clearest point of view in your niche and still create content that doesn't connect because you're delivering it from behind a layer of protection, a layer of professionalism or polish or qualifications that keep you just slightly at arm's length from the person watching. And this module is about removing that layer or layers, not all at once, not in a way that feels reckless or forced, but deliberately, with intention, lesson by lesson. We're going to look at what's keeping you smaller than you need to be on camera, and we're going to do something about it. There's 3 lessons, each one builds on the last. By the end of this module, you're going to have a visibility commitment that is specifically yours, a pre-filming practice that grounds you before every recording, and a sustainable rhythm that means you actually keep showing up instead of going quiet every time life gets hard or fear gets loud. So let's get into it. See you in the first lesson. Welcome to lesson 1. I want to paint you a picture. Imagine 2 coaches. Both are genuinely good at what they do. Both are knowledgeable, qualified, experienced. Both are creating YouTube content consistently, posting regularly, optimizing their titles and their thumbnails, showing up week after week. Coach A creates content that is helpful, informative, and broadly agreeable. She covers topics her audience cares about. She gives good advice. She never says anything that would be off-putting. Her videos are watchable, professional, fine. Coach B creates content that is also helpful and informative, but she has a point of view. She says things that make some people uncomfortable. She disagrees with conventional wisdom when she genuinely disagrees with it. She shares her actual perspective, not just the safest version of it. Some people watch her and think, that's not for me. But the people it's for, they feel like she's reading their diary. They feel like she's reading their thoughts. They comment, they share, they come back, and eventually they buy. It's the same topic, same level of expertise, completely different results. And here's why. Safe content creates a transaction. Someone watches, they get some value, they leave. There's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing wrong with them, and there's just no connection, right? No reason to choose you specifically. No reason to come back to you. Brave content creates a relationship. Someone watches and feels seen, feels challenged, feels understood, or even inspired in a way that feels personal. That feeling is the beginning of trust, and trust is what sells. Now, I want to be clear about what I mean by safe content because I'm not talking about production quality or video length or whether you use a ring light or not. I'm talking about the energy underneath the content, the degree to which the real you, with your actual opinions, your specific perspectives, your willingness to say the thing that needs saying is present in what you're creating. Safe content has certain recognizable qualities, so I want to go through those now. So let me describe them to you so you can start to spot them in your own work. Safe content uses universal language. It speaks to everyone, which means it connects with no one specifically. For example, if you want to grow your business, instead of saying something like, if you're a coach who's been posting on YouTube for 6 months and wondering why nobody's buying, safe content avoids the counterintuitive. It sticks to what's broadly accepted, what's the mainstream in your niche already agrees with, what nobody would reasonably disagree with or argue against. It's correct, it's just not interesting. Safe content qualifies itself constantly by saying things like, this is just my opinion, but, or I could be wrong about this, but, or of course everyone is different, right? These phrases are not humility. They are armor. They're ways of softening a message before it lands so that nobody can really hold it to you. Safe content skips the personal. It teaches without revealing. It advises without exposing. It creates a professional distance that reads to your viewer as, she knows a lot, but I don't know if I trust her yet. And here's the financial reality of safe content, because I want to be honest and direct about this. Safe content attracts browsers. Brave content attracts buyers. Browsers are people who consume your content and enjoy it and never buy anything. They might subscribe, they might watch regularly, they might even comment occasionally, but they're not buying because there's nothing in your content that creates enough of a connection for them to take that step. Buyers are people who watch your content and feel understood at the level that makes them think this person gets it in a way that nobody else does. They are not just consuming information, they are recognizing themselves in your work. And that recognition is what moves someone from passive viewer to active client. So now let me talk about why coaches play it safe, because it's almost never what it looks like on the surface. The most common reason is fear of judgment. The worry that if you say something specific and opinionated, someone will disagree, push back, leave a negative comment, unsubscribe. And that feels like evidence that you got it wrong or that you're doing it wrong. But here's the reframe I want you to sit with this. The people who push back on brave, specific, opinionated content are not your ideal clients anyway, right? They were never going to buy from you in the first place. Their discomfort with what you said is actually useful information. It tells you that they're not your person. And every person who is not your person, who self-selects out of your audience, is making room for someone who is. The unsubscribe is not a failure, it's a filter. And another common reason is imposter syndrome. The feeling that you like you don't have the authority to hold a strong opinion, that you need more credentials, more experience, or more proof before you're allowed to say something direct and definitive. I want to challenge that directly. Your opinion doesn't require a PhD. It requires lived experience, genuine thinking, and the courage to articulate what you actually believe. The coaches who command the most authority on YouTube are not always the most credentialed. They are the most convicted. They believe what they say, and they say it like they believe it. And that quality of conviction is what audiences respond to. The third reason is people pleasing. The deep-seated desire to be liked, to be approved of, to not make anyone feel bad. And I say this with compassion because I have lived this myself. People pleasing is extraordinarily expensive in business. It keeps you small, it keeps your content generic, it burns you out, and it keeps your ideal client from finding you because you're hiding inside the content that could have been made by anyone. So here's what I want you to do with all of this. Your workbook exercise for this lesson is an honest audit of your last 5 videos or pieces of content that you made. For each one, I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I start to say something real and then qualify it or soften it into nothing? What did I actually want to say that I didn't say? What is one thing in this piece of content that only I could have said? And if the answer is nothing, what would I have to add to make it mine? This exercise is not about judging your past content. It's about developing your ability to see the difference between safe and brave content in your own work, in real time, so that going forward, you can catch yourself in the moment and make a different choice. Because here's what I know. The version of your content that's fully expressed, the one where you're saying the thing you actually think, in the way you actually think it, without any disclaimers at the end, is not just more authentic, it's more effective, it's more memorable, it's more likely to get shared, more likely to be quoted back at you in your DMs, and more likely to result in someone clicking the link in your description and taking the next step towards working with you. Safe is comfortable. Brave is profitable. See you in the next lesson where we're going to talk about the actual practice of showing up fully on camera, not just why it matters, but how to do it even when the fear is loud. See you there. Welcome back to lesson 2. The last lesson we talked about why safe content costs your clients. And I imagine some of you finished that lesson feeling fired up and ready, and then sat down to film something and felt the fear arrive again, like it always does. That's exactly what we're talking about today. Because here's what I want you to understand about visibility. It's not a personality trait. It's not something you either have or you don't have. It is not reserved for the naturally confident, the extroverted, the people who have always found it easy to be seen. Full visibility on camera is a practice, a decision you make and then make again and again and again until the making of it becomes more natural than not making it. Until showing up fully feels more uncomfortable to avoid than to actually do. And I say this not as someone who's always has found it easy to be vulnerable. I say this as someone who built a business by being fully herself on camera, then spent a period of time being a polished version, professional version, carefully constructed version of herself on camera, and then had to find her way back to the real thing. So I have been through all the cycles, and I can tell you from both sides, the practice is worth it every single time. So let's talk about what actually happens in the space between I know what I want to say and I'm pressing record, because that space is where most of the real work happens. For most coaches, there are a set of recurring inner voices that show up reliably right before filming. I want to name them because naming them is the first step to not being run over by them. The first voice is what I call the critic. This is the voice that evaluates you before you've even started. That's not a good enough idea. Someone has already said that better. Someone has more credentials, has said that better. Who are you to teach this? The critic wants you to wait until you're more ready, more qualified, more certain. The critic will wait forever if you let it. The second voice is the approval seeker. This is the voice that imagines every possible viewer and tries to make the content acceptable to all of them. For example, what if a really experienced coach watches this and thinks it's too basic? What if my peers see this and think I'm being too opinionated? The approval seeker makes your content smaller and blander with every edit it suggests. The third voice that you'll hear is the perfectionist. And this one doesn't show up before you film, it shows up after. It watches the footage back and finds every stumble, every pause, every moment where you lost your thread or said or ah too many times. The perfectionist would rather you never publish than you publish something that's imperfect. And I'm not going to tell you these voices ever go away. In my experience, they don't, not completely, but they do get quieter as your commitment gets louder. And what you can do is build a pre-filming practice that grounds you before you press record so that you go into the recording from a different state entirely, like centered, clear, and connected with why you're doing this. Here's my personal pre-filming practice. I'm sharing it here not because you need to copy it exactly, but because I want you to see what a real deliberate practice looks like, and then I'm going to ask you to build your own. Before I film anything, I do three things. First, I get into my body. I usually move or go for a walk or listen to some music I like and dance around. Sometimes just a few minutes of deliberate breathing or stretching or something just to get me in my body. This sounds simple, and it is, but the creative, connected, brave part of you lives inside your body, not just in your head. So if you sit down cold at your desk and try to be fully yourself on camera, you're starting at a disadvantage. So I want you to move first, because even 5 minutes makes a difference. Second, I remind myself who I'm talking to, why I'm doing this. Not a demographic or an age group, a person, the specific kind of person who needs to hear what I'm about to say today. I think about them, what they're struggling with right now, what they've tried that hasn't worked, what they're hoping this video will give them. This moves me out of my own head and into service, so into my heart, which is where the best content comes from. And the third thing I do is ask myself one question, if I haven't already scripted the video and asked myself this question earlier. What do I actually think about this topic? Not what am I supposed to say, not what would sound professional. What do I actually, genuinely, from lived experience and real conviction, think about this topic? And then I press record before the voices have time to talk me out of it. And that's it. That's the whole practice. It doesn't take long. It doesn't require a ritual or a ceremony or a particular kind of morning routine. It just requires intention, the deliberate act of choosing before you film to show up as yourself rather than as a performance of yourself. Now, I want to talk about something that comes up regularly and that I think deserves its own space in this lesson. What do you do when you film something brave and then you want to delete it? You've said the real thing. You've been fully yourself. You've recorded something that feels genuinely different from your usual content, more personal, more opinionated, more exposed, and then you watch it back and the fear floods in and your hands hover over the delete button. Here's my rule. If you want to delete it because it's generally not good, it's unclear, it's rambling, you lost the thread completely, fine, reshoot that. But if you want to delete it because it made you feel vulnerable, because you said something specific or brave or honest, and now you're scared of that reaction that might come from it, don't delete it. Sit with the discomfort for 24 hours. Watch it again. Ask someone you know and trust to watch it, and then publish it. Because in my experience, the content that makes you want to hide is almost always the content that makes your audience feel most found. And the videos I've posted that I was most terrified to publish have been the ones that generated the most meaningful responses and connection with my audience. The most, this changed something for me, comments. The most, I've been waiting for someone to say this just like this, messages. The most inquiries from people who felt like I was speaking directly to their situation. Fear of a response is not a reason to not post it. It's usually a sign that you've made something real for once. So here's your workbook exercise for this lesson. Part 1, write down 3 inner voices that show up most reliably for you before or after filming. Name them specifically. What do they say? What do they want you to do? Part 2, design your personal pre-filming practice. Based on what you know about yourself, what you need to feel grounded or connected and brave, write out your own version of the 3-step process I described earlier. It doesn't have to be like mine or look like mine. It just has to be yours, and you have to actually do it. Part 3, write your visibility commitment. Complete this sentence. From this point forward, I commit to saying on camera, ... and write what it is you've been holding back. The opinion, the truth, the part of your perspective that you've been keeping for discovery calls or private conversations or your own journal. Write it down as a commitment to yourself right now. That commitment is what we're going to keep building on for the rest of this course. Okay, I'll see you in lesson 3, where we're going to tackle the thing that derails most coaches more than anything else. Consistency, not as a discipline challenge, but as what it actually is, a sustainability and fear problem, and exactly how to fix it. See you there. Welcome back. Let's talk about consistency, because almost every coach I've ever worked with has it on their list of things to fix. post more, show up more, be more consistent. And almost every coach I ever worked with is thinking about it in a completely wrong way. Consistency is not a discipline problem. Let me say that again because I really want it to land. Consistency is not a discipline problem. If you are a coach or consultant running a business, showing up for clients, managing your own life, you have discipline. You are not lazy. The fact that you're here in this course working through these modules is the evidence of that. So when consistency breaks down, when you go quiet for 2 weeks or miss a month of uploads or start a run of videos and then stop, it is almost never because you lack the willpower to keep going. It's usually because of one of two things, or a combination of both. The first is a sustainability problem. Your content creation process is too heavy. It takes too long. It costs you too much energy. It requires too much of you each time you sit down to do it. So when life gets full, and life always gets full, content creation is the first thing that gets dropped. Not because it doesn't matter to you, because it's the heaviest thing on your list and the one with the least immediate consequences if you skip it today. The second is a fear problem, dressed up as a sustainability problem. The content creation process feels heavy partly because every time you go to make something, you face the discomfort of being seen and all those inner voices we talked about in lesson 2. The vulnerability of putting something real into the world and not knowing how it will land. And over time, that discomfort accumulates into a low-level dread or stress almost that makes you put it off. And putting it off makes it feel even bigger, which makes you put it off even more. And both of these have real solutions. So let's go through them. For the sustainability problem, the answer is a system, not a complex content machine, a simple, repeatable process that removes the decision fatigue and the starting from scratch energy that makes content creation feel so heavy. The approach that works best for my clients and for me personally is batching. Instead of creating content piece by piece throughout the month, which means you're constantly switching between running your business and creating content and never fully in either mode, you instead dedicate specific blocks of time to content creation and doing it all at once. So here's what this can look like in practice. Once a month, you take a planning block, maybe 90 minutes, where you decide what you're going to create that month. What topics, what angles, what CTAs. You don't create anything in this block, you just plan it. This single step removes an enormous amount of decision fatigue because you never sit down to film without knowing exactly what you're filming. Then you create a creation block, maybe a full day or 2 days, where you'd script and film everything you planned. Not one video, everything. You're already in the energy of creating. You're already set up. You're already in your filming headspace. So you go all the way through it while you're there. Then everything else, like editing, thumbnails, descriptions, that can also be batched separately or delegated or handled in smaller pockets of time throughout the month. The result is that you touch the emotionally heavy part of content creation, the planning, the scripting, the filming, once a month in a focused block or focused blocks, rather than spreading that weight across every week. And you show up to your audience consistently because the work is done in advance rather than scrambling together at the last minute. And this is how I run my content creation. It's how most of my high-performing clients run their content creation. It is not glamorous and it's not complex, and it works in a way that hoping you'll feel inspired every Tuesday does not. Now, for the fear problem, because I want to address this directly rather than pretending a good system solves everything, sometimes inconsistency is not about the heaviness of the process, it's about the fact that creating content that is truly yours, the kind we've been building towards in this entire module, requires you to be brave on a regular basis. And bravery is tiring. It takes something out of you every time you have to have the courage and be brave. And some weeks you just don't have it. You don't have the energy for that. And I want to normalize that because I think a lot of coaches or people carry unnecessary shame about the weeks they go quiet, as if going quiet means they've failed or they're not cut out for this. But I also want to give you something practical for those moments when the fear is loud and the last thing you want to do is put yourself on camera. That is often the most important time to film something short and real and honest. Not a perfectly planned, scripted, optimized video, just you talking to your audience, saying something true. Some of my most impactful videos have been the ones I filmed in 10 minutes because I had something on my mind and I said it. No script, no plans, just here's what I've been thinking about and here's why it matters. Those videos often outperform the carefully crafted ones because the rawness of them is itself a form of bravery, and your audience feels it. So one of your tools for the hard weeks is this. Give yourself permission to create something small and real instead of something big and polished. Lower the bar for what counts as showing up, because a 5-minute honest video is infinitely more valuable than a perfectly produced video you never filmed because the bar was too high. So let's talk about what consistency actually builds, because I think it helps to keep this in your front of your mind on the hard days where you just don't feel like showing up for filming or scripting or all of those things. Consistency on YouTube builds trust. Not just trust in the sense of she shows up regularly, so she must be reliable, though that does matter too, but trust in the deeper sense of I've watched this person enough times that I feel like I know her. That feeling of knowing someone, of having spent enough time with their content that they feel familiar and safe, is what bridges the gap between viewers and clients. Most people need to consume between 5 and 10 pieces of someone's content before they're ready to buy, which means the person who finds you today and loves your first video is probably not going to buy today. They're going to come back, and if they come back and there's new content that continues to feel like the same real, specific, brave person they found the first time, their trust compounds. It builds on itself. And at some point, often when they least expect it, they're ready. But if they come back and you've gone quiet for 6 weeks, or your tone changes, or your bravery changes, that trust doesn't just pause, it erodes slightly. The connection cools down, and you have to rebuild it every time you go quiet and come back. So consistency is not about the algorithm so much as it's about keeping the relationship warm with your audience. So here's your workbook exercise for this lesson. Part 1. Identify which type of consistency problem you have. Is it sustainability, fear, or both? And be honest. The solution looks different depending on the root cause. Then part 2, design your minimum viable content rhythm. What is the least amount of consistent content creation that would keep your channel alive, your audience warm, and your pipeline moving? And decide on that. Is it 1 video a week, 2 a month? Whatever it is, write it down as a commitment, not as an aspiration. Then number 3, plan your first batching day. Look at your calendar for the next 4 weeks, find a day or 2 half days that you can protect for planning and filming, and block it out now before you close this lesson. Not eventually, now. And part 4, write your plan for the hard weeks. What will you do on the weeks when the fear is loud, or you're tired and you don't want to show up? What's the simplified, low bar version of showing up that you can commit to? And that's Module 2 complete. You now know why safe content is costing you clients. You have a pre-filming practice that grounds you before every recording, and you have a sustainable content rhythm designed around how you actually work, not how you think you're supposed to work. In Module 3, we're turning outward now. We've spent 2 modules on you, who you are, how you show up. Now it's time to go deep on the people you're showing up for, your audience, and specifically the shift that changes everything, learning to speak their language instead of yours. So I'll see you in Module 3. Bye for now. Welcome to Module 3. We've done a lot of inner work to get here. You know who you are, you know what you stand for, and you've built a practice for showing up on camera fully and consistently. That foundation is real and it matters, and you don't want to underestimate what you've already done in the past 2 modules. But here's where we make a little turn, because up until now, everything has been about you, your identity, your voice, your visibility, and that work is essential because without it, nothing else holds together. But a YouTube channel that makes you money is not just about expressing yourself, it's about expressing yourself in a way that lands for a specific person, in a way that makes sense, that makes them feel seen, understood, and compelled to keep watching. And that requires something that a lot of coaches find genuinely difficult to do. It requires you to get out of your own head and into their minds. So here's what I mean. You are an expert, and you have spent years, maybe decades even, developing your knowledge, your methodology, your way of seeing the world. And that expertise is extraordinary, but it's also creating a gap between you and the person you're trying to reach. A gap in language, that is, in awareness, in how the problem even gets described. You call it one thing and they call it something different. You see the root cause clearly, they can only feel the symptom. So you know the solution, they don't even know the right questions to ask yet. And Module 3 is about closing that gap. So 3 lessons in the module, and by the end of the module, you will know exactly who you're talking to, what they're actually struggling with, and how to speak about it in their words. So every video you create, your ideal client feels like it was made specifically for them. Welcome to Lesson 1 of Module 3. I want to start with something I call the curse of knowledge. And it's genuinely a curse, especially for coaches and consultants who are exceptional at what they do. Here's how it works. Once you know something, like really know it, like at the level of embodied understanding that comes from years of study and practice and application, you cannot unknow it. You cannot remember also what it felt like to not know it. The concepts that once felt foreign to you and complex now feel obvious and simple. And because it feels obvious and simple to you, unconsciously, you assume it feels obvious and simple to everyone else. It doesn't. The thing you explain in 30 seconds because it seems so basic, your ideal client has never heard it framed that way. The concepts you've built your entire methodology around, they might not even have the vocabulary for that methodology. The problem you can diagnose in 5 minutes because you've seen it 100 times with 100 clients, they've been living inside that for years without being able to name it. This is the curse of knowledge, and it's the single most common reason that smart, skilled, genuinely excellent coaches create content that doesn't connect. Not because the content is wrong, but because it's being pitched at the wrong level, educational-wise speaking. It's created at a level 10 understanding, but it's being delivered to a level 1 or 2 of the audience's level. And that gap between all of those levels between, the 8 levels between, is where the disconnect happens. So let me give you a concrete example of what this looks like in practice. Imagine a coach whose work is all about helping people break free from people pleasing. She has spent years studying attachment theory, nervous system regulation, the psychology of approval seeking, and she understands this topic at a deep, nuanced, sophisticated level. So she makes a video called How Anxious Attachment Patterns Create Fawning Responses in High Achieving Women. What? That title is accurate, yes. It's intelligent, yes. It demonstrates real expertise, her expertise, and her ideal client, the woman who is exhausted from always saying yes, who lies awake replaying conversation, who feels resentful but doesn't know why, just knows that she gives and nobody seems to give back. That woman does not click on that video because she doesn't know she has anxious attachment. She doesn't know what fawning means. She just knows she's tired and she can't say no, and she wishes someone just tell her how to stop doing this. The video that reaches her says something like, why you can't stop saying yes when really you mean no, and how to finally change it. The same coach is the same expertise, same underlying content, but completely different entry points. One that meets the viewer where she actually is instead of where the coach's expertise lives. That's the shift we're making in this module. From your level of understanding to their level of experience. From your language to their language. From your view of the problem to their feelings of the problem. And the first step is developing what I call the beginner's mind. The deliberate practice of remembering or imagining what it felt like to be at the beginning of the journey your ideal client is on. Some of you have a real advantage here because you were once exactly where your ideal client is now. You lived the problem before you solved it. You know what it feels like from the inside, the confusion, the frustration, the specific thoughts that went through your mind. That lived experience is gold. Use it. It's the most direct path back to your ideal client's reality. For those of you whose expertise came through a more academic or professional route rather than personal experience, this takes a little bit more deliberate effort. You have to work harder to imagine the experience of not knowing what you know, to reconstruct the confusion and the overwhelm that your ideal client is living inside right now. And one of the most useful exercises for this is what I call the stranger test. Imagine someone who knows absolutely nothing about your field, a complete stranger, no background, no context. How would you explain your core topic to them? Not the sophisticated version, the version that starts from zero. The language you use in that explanation, the simple words, the analogies, it's a bit like when you moments. That is the language your content should be built on. Not always. There's a place for depth and nuance, but as your starting point, that's where you should focus, as your entry point, as the place you begin before you go deeper. Because here's what happens when you get this right. Your ideal client watches your video, and instead of feeling slightly impressed, but ultimately unclear, they feel seen. They feel like you understand their situation at a level that most people don't. They feel like you're not just an expert talking at them, but someone who's actually gets what it's like to be where they are. And that feeling of being genuinely understood is the most powerful trust builder that exists. It's more powerful than credentials. It's more powerful than testimonials. It's more powerful than production quality or posting frequency or any tactical element of your channel. People buy from people who understand them, full stop. Now, I want to address something that comes up when I teach this because it's important. Getting out of your own head and speaking to your audience at their level does not mean dumbing down your content. It does not mean hiding your expertise or pretending to be less than sophisticated than you are. It means being such a skilled communicator that you can take your level 10 understanding and translate it into something that creates genuine insight and real movement for someone at a level 1 or level 2 of understanding of your topic. And that translation is actually a higher skill than just teaching to your own level. It requires you to understand the subject matter deeply enough to simplify it without losing its essence. And when you can do that, when you can take something genuinely complex and make it feel clear and achievable for your audience doesn't think less of you. They think you're extraordinary. And because you make them feel smart, you make them feel like they get something. Whereas if you show up at a level 10 teaching to a level 2, you make them feel like an idiot. They feel so confused, they feel so lost, and they won't want to come back. People want to feel smarter by watching your content, not dumber. So that's why it's really important to go down to their level. And not going down to their level, just simplifying it with terminology, with the metaphors you use, all of that, so that they can really grasp the concepts you're talking about. So here's your workbook exercise for this lesson. Part 1 is to write down 3 concepts, frameworks, or pieces of knowledge that are central to your work, things you explain or teach regularly. Then part 2 is for each one, write how you would normally explain it. Then write how you would explain it to someone who had zero background in your field, a complete beginner. And use simple language, analogies, everyday examples. No jargon here. And then part 3 is compare the 2 versions and notice where the gap is. Notice the words that change, the assumptions that drop away, the analogies that appear. That gap is where your content translation work lives. And then part 4 is write 3 video ideas based on the beginner version of those concepts, framed from the place where your ideal client actually is, not from where your expertise lives. So that's it. I'll see you in lesson 2, where we're going to go even more specific into the exact language your ideal client uses to describe their problem and how to harvest it and use it to make your content feel like it was written specifically for them. There's a moment that every coach I've worked with remembers, the moment a viewer or a client says something like, "I don't know how you know exactly what I was thinking," or "It felt like you wrote that video just for me," or "I've watched 100 videos on this topic and yours is the first one that actually made me feel understood or actually made sense to me." That moment is not magic. It's not some mysterious chemistry between you and that particular person. It's language. Specifically, it's using their language, the exact words and phrases that your ideal client uses to describe their own experience, their own problems, their own desires, not your professional terminology, not the vocabulary of your methodology. Their words, the ones they've typed into Google at 11 p.m., the ones they use in the voice memos they send their friends. When your content uses those words, when your titles, your hooks, your script sounds like the internal monologue of your ideal client rather than polished output of an expert, something shifts. The psychological distance between the viewer and the content collapses. They stop watching as a passive consumer and start listening as someone who feels personally addressed. And personally addressed people take action. So let's talk about where to find this language, because it's absolutely everywhere once you know how to look for it. The first and richest source is your own client work. The discovery calls, the coaching sessions, the intake forms, the WhatsApp messages, the emails. Every time a client or potential client describes their situation in their own words, they are giving you content gold. The phrases they use to describe their problem, the metaphor they reach for when they try to explain how it feels, the specific outcome they describe when you ask them what they actually want. So start collecting these. Literally, keep a document or a note on your phone where you paste the exact language you hear from clients. And don't paraphrase it. Don't clean it up. Keep it in the raw form, because raw is what you want. And you can also use AI to help you with this. So if you have recorded meetings, if you have WhatsApp messages, all those things, dump them into AI, copy and paste them in there, upload the files, whatever, and have it pull out all the language that they use, or the phrases, or the metaphors, etc. And I want you to use the slightly messy, emotionally charged, imperfect language of someone trying to describe a real experience, because the slightly messy, the emotionally charged, the imperfect language of someone trying to describe a real experience is infinitely more useful than a polished version of the same thing. The second source I recommend is comment sections. So comments of your own videos or other videos in your niche, or go to 3 or 4 of the biggest channels in your space and read the comments on their most popular videos, and read them with a particular eye for the comment that describes an experience or a problem rather than just responding to the content. This is so me. I do this all the time and I never understood why. Can you make a video about when you're feeling like you're doing everything right but nothing is working? Or I've been struggling with this for years and nobody talks about it like this. Those comments are your ideal client telling you exactly what they need in exactly the words they use to think about it. The third source is community spaces like Facebook groups, Reddit threads, forums in your niche. People asking questions in these spaces are at their most unguarded. They're not trying to sound professional or together. They're reaching for help and describing their situation as honestly as they know how. The language there is raw and real and incredibly useful. The fourth source is your own DMs and emails. If people reach out to you, whether to ask a question, respond to something you posted, or inquire about working with you, pay attention to how they describe their situation that they want help with. The specific words in those messages are a direct window into how your ideal client thinks and talks about their problem. Now, here's how to use all of this language practically in your content. Your video titles. This is the highest leverage place to use your audience's language because the title is what decides whether they click or scroll past. If your title uses your terminology, how to regulate your nervous system for business success, you'll reach the people who already know that language. But if it uses their terminology, why you feel anxious every time you try to grow your business, you reach the much larger group of people who are living the experience without yet having the vocabulary for it. And your hooks. The first 15 to 30 seconds of your video is where your viewer decides where to keep watching. If your hook names their experience in their own language, for example, if you've ever posted a video and immediately want to delete it, this is for you, they feel addressed. They lean in, they stay. And your scripts. Throughout your content, when you describe the problem or the experience your viewer is having, use the plain emotional language of the experience rather than the clinical language of the solution. So for example, that feeling when you've worked really hard on something and nobody seems to notice lands differently than when your content lacks strategic positioning, right? Both might be true, only one creates connection. So I want to make an important distinction here because I've seen coaches take this too far in a way that feels manipulative rather than empathetic. So using your audience's language is not about exploiting their pain. It's not about picking on their wounds to get a reaction. It's about demonstrating that you genuinely understand their experience, which you do, because you've listened to it carefully, because you've done the work of really hearing what they're going through. The difference in practice is intention. If you use their language to make them feel seen and to give them something genuinely valuable, a real insight, a practical shift, a new way of understanding their situation, that's empathy in action. If you use their language purely to manufacture an emotional response and then the content doesn't deliver, that's manipulation. So your audience can feel the difference even if they can't always name it. So always let the language serve the content. Always make sure what comes after the hook is worth the attention the hook asks for. So make sure whatever comes after the hook is worth the attention the hook asks for. So here's your workbook exercise for this lesson. Part 1, the language harvest. Spend 30 minutes this week doing one of the following. Read comments on 3 popular videos in your niche, read through a relevant community or forum, or go back through your own client messages and take notes. And write down every phrase that describes an experience, a problem, a fear, or a desired outcome, and aim for at least 20 phrases. And don't edit them. Write them down word for word. Part 2, from your harvest, identify the 5 phrases that feel most charged, the ones that most accurately capture what your ideal client is going through. Part 3, take your last 3 video titles and rewrite them using the language from your harvest. Notice how they change. Notice which version you would be more likely to click on if you were your ideal client. Part 4, write 3 new video ideas using your harvested language as a starting point, like the title, the hook, the concept, and the core experience you're speaking to. And that exercise alone will change the way your content performs radically. So not because the underlying substance has changed, but because the entry point has changed. Because you stopped asking your ideal client to find their way into your world and you started meeting them in theirs. So I will see you in lesson 3, where we go deep into your ideal client's journey, not just the language they use, but what they're truly searching for underneath it and how to map your content in a way that works for them. Here's something I want you to think about. When your ideal client types something into YouTube search, what are they actually looking for? On the surface level, the answer seems obvious. They're looking for the answer to their question they typed, obviously. Like a how to do this, a solution for this, an explanation. But underneath that, underneath every search query, every comment, every DM, every can you make a video about this, there is something deeper being asked. Something that has less to do with information and more to do with feeling. They want to know if their situation is fixable. They want to feel less alone in it. They want to find someone who understands it at their level, that the level they're living it, not just at the level of having read about it. They want to feel like the solution is within reach, like it's possible for someone like them, not just for the exceptional cases in the testimonials. And underneath all of that, the thing that is almost never said out loud, but is always present, is the question, is there someone out there who really gets this? Your content is not just answering questions. At its best, it's answering that deeper question. It is being the person who really gets it. The way you do that consistently is by understanding not just what your ideal client is struggling with, but where they are in their journey and how aware they are of their problem. How close are they to being ready to do something about it? What do they need to understand or believe before they will take action? And I want to introduce you to a framework that I use constantly in my own content planning. I call it the 3 levels of audience awareness. Level 1 is the person who knows something is wrong, but doesn't know what. They're experiencing symptoms like frustration, stuckness, results that don't match their effort, but they haven't yet connected those symptoms to something specific or a specific problem that you solve. They're searching in vague terms like, why is my business not growing? Or how to get more clients? Or why does marketing feel so hard? They know the feeling, but the cause is not clear. So content for this person names the experience before it names the solution. So it says, if this is what you're feeling, here's what might actually be going on. It creates that diagnostic moment. Oh, so that's what this is feeling. That is one of the most powerful things a piece of content can do for someone. And then level 2 is the person who knows what the problem is, but doesn't know how to solve it yet. So they've done some research, they understand their situation better than level 1 person. They're searching more specifically, like how to find my niche on YouTube, or how to get coaching clients without social media, or why my YouTube channel isn't growing. They know the question, but not the answer. The content for this person goes straight to the solution, but frames it in a way that addresses the specific person of the problem they're experiencing. So this is what I mean. This is where your methodology, your frameworks, your specific approach becomes the content. You're not just explaining the concept, you're showing them your way of solving it. So that's level 2. Level 3 is the person who knows the problem, has tried some solution, and is now evaluating who to go deeper with. So they're looking for the solution that works for them. They've watched videos, they've read blog posts, they might have tried a few things, and now they're looking for the person whose approach resonates most with them, whose voice, perspective, and methodology feels like the right fit for them. They're searching for you specifically, or for the kind of thinking you represent. So content for this person is more personal and more opinionated. It's where your truth telling from module 1 and your visibility from module 2 do their most important work. Because this person is not just evaluating your information, they're evaluating you. And the content that wins them in this category is where your specific point of view is most fully expressed. So here's why this matters for your content strategy. A channel that only creates level 2 content, the how-to videos, the solution-focused tutorials, will grow, but it will attract a lot of browsers and not enough buyers, because the people most ready to buy are often at level 3. And level 3 content is where most coaches are most reluctant to go because it requires the most personal exposure. A channel that mixes all 3 levels, that has content reaching people at the beginning of awareness, content serving people who are actively looking for solutions, and content that speaks directly to the people who are evaluating you as a potential guide, that channel builds a pipeline. It captures people at every stage and walks them through consistent, valuable content towards the point of being ready to buy eventually. Now, let me give you the most practical tool in this lesson, the one I come back to constantly when I'm planning content and I want to make sure it's going to land. I call it the 2 a.m. question. Here's the premise. Your ideal client has a moment, maybe it's literally 2 a.m., maybe it's a Tuesday afternoon, who knows, and it's where the real version of their struggle surfaces, not the polished version they described in a professional context, the raw, honest, slightly desperate version, the version they might not even say out loud to anyone. what is that question? What is the thing they're lying awake thinking about that your work directly addresses? For a business coach working with new coaches, it might be, what if I'm not actually good enough to do this and everything I've built so far has just been luck? For a health coach working with busy professionals, it might be, what if I've left it too long and my body is just done being able to change? So these questions are almost never the titles of YouTube videos. They're too raw, they're too specific, they're too vulnerable, but they are the emotional undercurrent underneath everything your ideal client searches for. And when your content, even if the title is more accessible than the raw question, speaks directly to that undercurrent, your viewer feels it. And your job is not to exploit that 2 a.m. question. Your job is to answer it, to be the content that finds them in that moment and says, I see you, I understand this, and I want to show you that there is a way through this. And that is why people cry watching YouTube videos. That is why people send messages to creators they've never met saying, you changed my life. That is not about production quality or SEO or posting frequency. It is about being the content that answered the real question, the raw question. So here's your workbook exercise for this lesson. Part 1, write your ideal client's journey in 3 stages, level 1, level 2, and level 3. For each stage, describe where they are, what they're searching for, and what they need from that content at that stage. Part 2, write the 2 a.m. question, the raw, honest, private version of what your ideal client is really struggling with underneath everything else. Write it in their words, not yours. Part 3, map 5 video ideas, at least 1 for each awareness level, that speak to different points in your ideal client's journey. For each idea, write the title, the awareness level it's targeting, and the emotional undercurrent it's speaking to. Part 4, look at your existing content that you have and which awareness level does most of it sit at. What are the gaps? What does your channel need more of to create a more complete pipeline? So that's module 3 complete now. You now know how to see your work through your ideal client's eyes, speak in their language, and to meet them at every stage of their journey. And that is the empathy infrastructure that makes everything else, your offer, your CTAs, your sales conversions, feel natural rather than forced. Because when someone has been finding themselves in your content for weeks or months, buying from you doesn't feel like a sales transaction. It feels like the logical next step in a relationship they've already been building. Module 4 is where we're taking everything you've built, your voice, your visibility, your audience understanding, and we connect it directly to money, your offer, your framework, your client getting content strategy, the part where all of this inner and outer work start to show up in your bank account. So it's going to be exciting, and I'll see you there. See you in Module 4. Welcome to Module 4. I want to take a moment before we dive in to acknowledge how far you've come. In Module 1, you found out who you really are, who your identity, your superpower, your genuine point of view. And in Module 2, you built the practice of actually showing up with all of that fully, consistently, without shrinking. In Module 3, you made the turn outward and learned how to see your work through your ideal client's eyes, speak their language, and meet them at every stage of their journey. And that is an enormous amount of foundational work you have done. And I want you to feel that, because what you've built in the first 3 modules is what most coaches never build. Most coaches skip straight to tactics and wonder why nothing sticks. But you've built the foundation properly. And now we talk about money. Because here's the truth that I want to say directly as at the start of this module. Everything you've done up until this point, the identity work, the visibility work, the audience work, it all has to lead somewhere. A YouTube channel that expresses you beautifully and serves your audience generously, but never converts a viewer into a client is not a business asset. It's an expensive hobby that drains you and robs you of your time. And I don't want that for you. And I know that you don't want that for yourself either. So Module 4 is where we close the gap between creating content and getting paid for it. So there's going to be 3 lessons: your offer, your framework, and your client getting CTA. By the end of this module, you will know exactly what you're selling, how to talk about it naturally on camera, and how to invite people into it in a way that feels like integrity rather than awkwardness. Let's go. I want to start this lesson with a question that will tell you immediately whether your offer is clear enough to sell on YouTube. If someone watched one of your videos, went to your channel page, and spent 60 seconds looking around, would they know exactly what you offer, who it's for, and what changes for them when they work with you? And I'm not talking roughly or not kind of, but exactly. If the answer is anything other than a confident yes, that is your first and most important thing to fix right now. Because here's the reality of how YouTube works as a sales tool. Someone finds your video, they watch it, they feel something, connection, recognition, curiosity, trust, hopefully, and then they think, I want more of this. And so they click onto your channel. They have approximately 60 seconds of interest and attention before they decide whether you are someone worth following, someone worth engaging with, or someone worth potentially investing in later on. In those 60 seconds, if they cannot immediately understand what you do and whether it's relevant relevant to them, they leave. Not because they don't like you, but because you didn't make it easy enough for them to know if you are their person. So clarity is not just a marketing nicety. Clarity is a service to your ideal client. When you make it easy for the right people to understand what you offer and self-select in or out, and equally easy for the wrong person to self-select out, you are solving everyone's time. You are saving everyone's time and energy, including your own. So let's build your offer clarity from the ground up. There are 4 elements to a clear offer. I want to walk through each one, and then we're going to put them together into something you can actually use on camera. The first element is the transformation. What changes for your client because of working with you? Not the features of what you offer, not 6 sessions or a 12-week program or weekly calls, the actual shift that happens in their life, their business, their health, their relationships. What is the before and what is the after? This is where most coaches get vague. They say something like, I help people reach their potential, or I support clients in their journey. And these things might be true, but they don't land. They don't create, oh, that's exactly what I need moment that drives action. The transformation needs to be specific. Not I help coaches grow their business, but I help coaches get their first clients from YouTube without a big audience or a complex funnel. Not I help women feel better about themselves, but I help divorced women rebuild their confidence and create a life they actually want to wake up to. So specific transformations attract specific people. Vague transformations attract nobody in particular. The second element that I want you to focus on is audience. Who specifically is this for? This connects directly to everything you built in Module 3, the specific person at a specific stage with a specific problem. The more precisely you can name your audience, the more clearly your ideal client will recognize themselves, and the more confident they will feel that your offer is actually designed for them and their situation. The third element is the mechanism. How do you create the transformation? This doesn't need to be a lengthy explanation. It can be a single sentence that describes your approach in plain language, such as using a 4-step framework that takes you from invisible to expert trusted authority, or through deep one-to-one coaching that combines mindset work with real business strategy. The mechanism gives your offer credibility. It shows you that you have a specific considered approach, not just intention. The fourth element is the outcome. What specifically will they have, be, or be able to do at the end of working with you that they can't do right now? The outcome is the tangible evidence of the transformation, the thing they can point to and say, this is what changed. When you have all 4 of these elements clearly articulated, you can put them together into what I call the one sentence or 2 at most that captures all 4 elements in plain language. Here's the formula. I help specific audience to specific transformation through mechanism, so that outcome. Let me give you an example using my own work. I help coaches and consultants build 6-figure businesses through YouTube by finding their authentic voice. The one sentence tells you who it's for, what changes, how it works, and what you get. Anyone who hears that either immediately thinks, that's for me or that's not for me. And both of those responses are exactly what you want. Now, here's where a lot of coaches get stuck, and I want to address it directly because it's important. Offer clarity is not just a marketing problem, it's almost always a confidence problem underneath. When coaches are vague about what they offer, it is rarely because they don't know what they do. It's because they're not fully sure they can promise that result. They're hedging, right? They're keeping the language soft enough that they can't be held accountable to it, like leaving themselves an out. And I understand that instinct because making a clear, specific promise feels like exposure. What if they work with you and don't get the result? What if the promise is too bold? But here's what I want you to consider. Your ideal client is not looking for a guarantee. They're looking for confidence. They want to see that you believe in what you do, that you've seen it work, that you know how to make it work, that you are willing to say clearly what they can expect from the experience of working with you. Your confidence in your offer is part of the offer. When you state clearly what you do and who it's for and what changes, without hedging, without excessive qualifications, without making them work to understand it, you are already demonstrating the kind of conviction that makes people trust you with their time and their money. So your job in this lesson is to get clear, and then get confident. And then get it on camera as well. So in your channel descriptions, in the first 30 seconds of your about video, woven naturally into the content of your videos so that people always know what you do and how to take the next step with you. So here's your workbook exercise for today. Part 1, write out the 4 elements of your offer individually: transformation, audience, mechanism, outcome. Don't worry about making it sound good yet. Just get the substance down clearly and specifically. Part 2, write your offer one-liner using the formula. Write it 3 different ways, slightly different each time. Then read them back and choose the one that feels most true and most clear. You can also use AI to help you with this. Part 3, write a 3-sentence offer description, slightly expanded from the one-liner, that you could say naturally in a video. Not a rehearsed pitch, something that sounds like you talking, not like you performing. Then part 4, go to your YouTube channel right now and check your channel description and about section. Does your offer one-liner appear there clearly? If not, that's your first action after this module. I will see you in the next lesson. I want to ask you something. When your ideal client has finished watching your video and they go and watch 3 other coaches in your space, what makes them remember you specifically? Like, what makes them come back to you rather than going back to the others? Part of it is your voice, your personality, your point of view, everything we've been building in this course. But there's another element that works almost like a structural anchor in your ideal client's mind. Something that makes your approach feel distinct, organized, and trustworthy in a way that's hard to fully articulate, but very easy to feel. That element is your framework. And before you tell me you don't have one, I promise you, you do. You just haven't named it yet. So here's what I mean by a framework. A framework is the organized, structured version of how you create results for your clients. It's the map of your methodology, the stages, the steps, the phases that someone moves through when they work with you. It's the underlying architecture of your approach made visible. Every coach who has worked with more than a handful of clients has a framework because you've done this enough times that you've developed a way of doing it, a sequence, a process, a set of moves that you make in a particular order because experience has shown you that that order works. That implicit process is your framework. The work of this lesson is to make that explicit. And let me tell you why this matters so much, both for your business and your YouTube channel and your content specifically. For your business, a named framework does something very special and specific. It shifts the perception of what you do from service to system. Without a framework, you are offering your time, your expertise, your support, all of which are valuable, but which are also somewhat intangible and therefore difficult to evaluate and compare. With a framework, you are offering to a specific structured approach to getting a specific result. That feels more concrete, more trustworthy, more worth investing in. And it also protects your positioning. When you name your approach, when you call it something that is distinctively yours, you make it much harder for people to see you as interchangeable with other coaches in your space. You are not just a business coach, you are the coach who uses the Own Your Voice method or the Truth Rebels framework or whatever you choose to call it. That distinctiveness leaves in your audience mind a way to remember you that's something simple like business coach cannot. For your YouTube content specifically, a framework is an extraordinary gift because once you have a named structured framework, you essentially have an infinite content engine. Every stage of your framework is multiple videos. Every concept within each stage is multiple videos. Every question people have about how to move from one stage to the next is multiple videos. Your framework gives your content structure coherence and a through line that makes your channel feel like a body of work rather than a collection of random videos. It also gives your audience a way to track their own progress. When they understand your framework, they can see where they are in the journey, what comes next, and why the content you're making right now is relevant to their specific stage. That orientation keeps them watching and watching longer. So how do you build yours? How do you build your framework? I want to walk you through a simple extraction process because as I said, the framework is already there. You're already using one, even if you don't realize it. We're just drawing it out. So step 1 is to think about a client you've worked with who got an exceptional result, someone whose transformation you're genuinely proud of. Now, think about the journey they went through from where they started when they came to you and where they ended up when they were finished with your program. What happened in that journey? What were the distinct phases or stages they went through? And don't think about this in terms of your program structure or your session schedule. Think about it in terms of what actually shifted for them internally, externally, and in what order those shifts happened. Step 2 then is do the same exercise with 2 or 3 other clients. Different people, different starting points, different contexts. What are the phases that appear consistently across all of their journeys, all of your clients that you analyze? What always seems to happen first? What comes next? What is always the final shift before the result arrives? What you're looking for is the pattern. the sequence that is common enough across different client experiences that it represents something real about how transformation actually happens in your work. Not just how you structure your program, but how the changes actually unfold. Then step 3 is to name those phases. This is where the framework becomes real. Each stage needs a name, ideally a word or short phrase that captures the essence of what happens in that stage in a way that feels clear and resonant. So some frameworks use sequential labels like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. These work, but they're not particularly memorable. The most powerful frameworks are names, are ones that capture both the action and the feeling of each stage. They're words or phrases your ideal client would use themselves, or that immediately make sense to them when they hear them. Words that make your clients think, yes, I know exactly what that stage feels like because I'm either in it right now or I just came out of it. Then step 4 is to give it a name, the whole framework, not just the stages. Your framework name should ideally connect to your broader brand and point of view. It should feel like yours, not generic, not borrowed from someone else's methodology, but an expression of your specific approach and philosophy. So if you look at how I work, the 5 areas we've been through, moving through in this course are themselves a framework. Know yourself, expose yourself, know your audience, sell yourself, and activate. Each stage builds on the last. Each has a distinct transformation. Together, they make a complete journey. That structure is not arbitrary. It reflects the actual sequence in which these shifts need to happen for the whole thing to work. Your framework is the same. It reflects the real sequence of transformations in your work. And when you can articulate it clearly, name it distinctly, and talk about it consistently on YouTube, it becomes one of the most powerful trust-building and client-attracting assets you have. So here's your workbook exercise for today. Part 1, map your client journey. Think about 3 to 5 clients whose results you're most proud of and what were the stages that they moved through while they worked with you. Write them out in sequence. Rough and unpolished is fine at this stage. Then part 2, look for the pattern. Where do the journeys overlap? What phases appear consistently through all of the clients that you're analyzing? What always seems to need to happen before the next thing needs to happen? What is the process, the phases? And distill those consistent phases into 3 to 5 stages that you would be teaching. Part 3, name your stages. For each stage, write 2 or 3 possible names, words, or phrases that capture what happens in that stage. Then choose the one that feels most true and most resonant. Part 4, name your framework. Write 5 possible names for the overall methodology. Play with them here. So say them out loud. Choose the one that feels most like you and most like the work. You can also use AI to help you with any of this, with coming up with any of names for your stages or your whole framework. Part 5, write a paragraph describing the framework, what it is, how it works, and why the stages are in the order they're in. This is the paragraph you'll use when you introduce your methodology on YouTube, on your website, and in sales conversations. So I will see you in lesson 3, the final piece of this module, and one of the most practically useful things we'll cover in the entire course, how to ask for the next step in a way that feels completely natural, genuine, confident, and never, not for a single second, salesy. See you there. I want to start this lesson by asking you to be honest with yourself about something. When you get to the end of a video, when you've delivered the content, you've said the thing you came to say, and now it's time to invite people to take a next step with you, how does that feel? For most coaches, the answer is somewhere between mildly uncomfortable and genuinely scary as heck. There's a hesitation, right? A voice that says, I don't want to come across as pushy or salesy, or they'll think I'm just in it for the money, or the content should speak for itself. And so the CTA either gets rushed through at the very end with an apologetic energy, or it gets skipped entirely, or it gets like a vague link in the description if you want to know more. And neither of those work. And I want to talk about why. And then I want to give you a completely different way to think about what a call to action or CTA actually is. So here's the reframe. A CTA is not a sales tactic. A CTA is the act of service. Think about it from your viewer's perspective. They've just watched your video. They've gotten real value from you, and something shifted for them. They see their situation more clearly. They have a new idea, a paradigm shift. They feel understood in a way they haven't felt before or in years. And now they're sitting with a question. question that might not be even like saying in their mind or saying it out loud. What do I do with this information? Where do I go next? Is there a way to go deeper? If you don't answer that question, if you just end the video and leave them to figure it out, you're not being honorable or humble or not salesy. You are just being unhelpful. You are letting someone who is genuinely interested in what you have to offer wander away because you didn't make it easy enough for them to take the next step. Your CTA is the answer to their unspoken question. It is you saying, if this resonated, if you want to go deeper, here's the specific thing you can do now to do that. And that is a service. That is completing the loop of the value you've already provided. When you start thinking about your CTA this way, as completing the experience rather than interrupting it, the awkwardness starts to dissolve because you're not asking for something, you're giving something, a clear, specific, easy next step for the people who are ready to take it. Okay, so now let's talk about what actually makes a call to action work, because there's a significant difference between a CTA that converts and one that gets completely ignored, even by the people who genuinely want to take action. The three elements of an effective CTA are specificity, relevance, and confidence. Specificity means telling them exactly what you do, exactly what they'll get, and exactly what happens next. Not check the link in my description. Tell them what the link leads to. If you want to take everything we talked about in this video and turn it into a real content strategy that brings you clients, I've created a short course called Own Your Voice, Create Your Paycheck. The link is in the description, and you can be inside it within minutes. That is specific. They know what it is, what it does, and how quickly they can access it. There is no friction there, right? There is no, let me go hunt for the information down in the description, then what do I do next if I want this? No, it's easy to find and easy to follow. Relevance means your CTA connects directly to the content of that specific video that they just watched. This is one of the most common CTA mistakes I see. Coaches using the same generic CTA on every single YouTube video, regardless of what the video is about. Work with me, link in bio. That CTA is disconnected from the experience that the viewer just had with your video. It asks them to make a leap from I just watched a video about finding my voice to I should go now and look at her sales page, without any bridge in between. Most effective CTAs feel like a natural extension off of the video or from the video. They pick up the thread that was just being discussed and extend it into an offer. So for example, in this video, we talked about why safe content costs you clients. In Own Your Voice, Create Your Paycheck, we go through exactly how to make the shift of all 5 stages, including how to find your specific voice and build a content system around it. The link is below this video. That CTA makes sense. It follows the video. The viewer doesn't have to work to connect the dots. And then lastly, confidence. Confidence means delivering your CTA without apology, without quantifying it, without the nervous energy that signals to your viewer that you're not sure you should be saying this. The energy when you deliver a CTA communicates as much as the words themselves. So if you deliver it with hesitation and a slight downward inflection, as if you're embarrassed to be asking, your viewer feels that. And it makes them uncertain too. If you're not certain of your pitch, how can they be? So confidence in your CTA is not arrogance. It's just you believing in what you're offering, and you know it creates real results. You know this particular person who just watched this particular video might be interested in this exact thing. And you're offering it clearly, directly, and without apology, because that's what a genuine service to them looks like. Now, let me give you 3 CTA styles that work well on YouTube so you have options, something to play around with, depending on the video and the offer that you want to make. So the first is the direct call to action. This is straightforward, gunshot, confident invitation. If you want to go deeper on everything we covered today, the link to Own Your Voice, Create Your Paycheck is in the description below. It's $47. You can move through it in a weekend. Here's the link. Clean, simple, no fuss. This style works well when the content has been practical and tactical, and the viewer is in a just tell me what to do next mode. The second is the story-led CTA. This is where you bridge from the content into the offer through a brief story or a client result. So for example, everything I just taught you in this video is what I walk my clients through in the first module of Own Your Voice, Create Your Paycheck. One of my clients, a health coach who had been posting on YouTube for a year with no inquiries, went through just this first piece of the framework and completely rewrote how she showed up with the camera. Within 6 weeks, she had her first YouTube inquiry. If that's what you're looking for, the link is below. This style works well when you want to make the transformation feel real and achievable, when your viewer might be wondering, but will this actually work for me? So that is a good call to action for that, or call to action style, I should say. The third is the curiosity call to action. This is slightly softer and works well when the offer is newer or the viewer might need a little more information before deciding. So it goes something like this. If you're curious about what it looks like to go through this whole process properly, from finding your voice all the way through to your first month of client getting content, I've put everything in the description below so you can take a look. No pressure, just have a look and see if it feels right for you, wherever you are. This style works well when you don't want to push, but you do want to create a clear, easy path for the curious ones. And you don't have to just choose one of these and use it forever. Different videos call for different styles of CTAs. What matters is that you have a CTA in every video, that you always, without exception, give your viewer a clear next step. Even if they don't take it today, the consistent presence of a clear invitation normalizes the idea of working with you and makes the eventual yes feel like a natural continuation rather than a sudden decision. And one more thing before we go to the workbook exercise. Where in your video should the CTA go? The answer is not just at the end. The most effective YouTube creators, the ones who consistently convert viewers into clients, weave their offer into their content in at least two places. A brief, natural mention somewhere towards the first third of the video, and often when you're making the point that the offer directly ties to, and then the full CTA at the end. So the mid video or a third way through the video mention might sound something like this. This is exactly one of the 5 things I walk through in Own Your Voice, Create Your Paycheck. But for now, let me give you the core of what you need to know, ... So that mention plants a seed about your call to action. It makes the end call to action at the end of the video feel familiar rather than sudden. And it captures the people who might not watch all the way to the end of your video, which is the majority of the people, right? So here's what I want you to do in your workbook now. Part 1, write the direct call to action version for your current primary offer and keep it 3 to 5 sentences. It's specific, relevant, and confident. No apology. Part 2, write the story-led call to action version. Choose a real client result, or if you don't have one yet, a result you've seen someone achieve through implementing your approach, and build a brief bridge from the story into your offer. Part 3, write the curiosity call to action. This is the version, remember, is softer, more invitational for the viewers who need a little more time. Then part 4, write a mid-video mention for your offer. 1 to 2 sentences that you could drop naturally into the middle of a video to plant the seed before the full call to action at the end. And lastly, part 5, identify the last 3 videos you published or that you plan to publish and write a specific relevant CTA for each one. One that picks up the thread of that specific video and connects it directly to your offer. So that's Module 4 complete. You now have a clear offer, a named framework, and 3 CTA styles you can use immediately. The gap between your content and your income just got significantly smaller. There's one module left, and it's the one that takes everything you've built, your voice, your visibility, your audience understanding, your offer clarity, and turns it into a real plan. Specific videos, a real system, your first month of client getting content mapped out and ready to go. So Module 5 is the 30-day voice activation plan. Welcome to Module 5. You have made it to the last module, and I want to take a genuine moment to acknowledge that, because what you've done in this course is not small. You've gone deeper than most coaches ever go. You know who you are. You have a practice for showing up fully on camera. You understand your ideal client now at a level that most content creators never reach, and you have a clear offer and a named framework and 3 ways to invite people into your work without feeling like you're selling your soul. That is a complete foundation, and it's more than most coaches who have been creating content for years have ever built deliberately. But here's what I know about this moment, because I have been here myself and I've watched hundreds of coaches arrive here. And this is the moment where it can all stay theoretical, where the insights live in a workbook and the videos don't get made. And 6 months from now, you're in the same place you were when you started, just with more knowledge and the same results. And I don't want that for you. And I know you don't want that for yourself either. So Module 5 exists for one reason and one reason only: to make sure that everything you've built in this course becomes something real for you, something you film, something you publish, something that starts working for you in the real world. And 3 lessons are in this module. And by the end of it, you will have 8 video ideas built around your truth and your audience. And you will have your first truth-led video scripted and ready to film. And you will have a simple content system that is realistic, sustainable, and designed around how you actually work, not how you think you're supposed to work. And this is where it all gets real and comes together. So let's go. I'm so excited to see you in Module 5, Lesson 1. I want to start this lesson by dismantling a belief that I see hold coaches back more than anything else when it comes to YouTube. And that is the belief that they need to figure out their whole content strategy before they can start. They need to know their niche perfectly. They need to have a content calendar for the next 6 months. They need to understand SEO and thumbnails and the algorithm and optimal posting times before they commit to anything. And so they plan and they plan and they refine and they refine. And the channel sits there with 3 videos from 8 months ago while the planning continues. And here is what I know to be true after building my own business on YouTube and helping hundreds of coaches to do the same. You do not need a perfect strategy. You need enough clarity to start. And then the strategy develops through the doing, the action that you take. The coaches who build real momentum on YouTube are not the ones that are the most sophisticated content planners. They are the ones who started before they were fully ready and figured it out as they went. So in this lesson, we are not building a 6-month content strategy. We are building 8 video ideas, enough for 1 month if you post twice a week, or 2 months if you post once a week. Enough to start with genuine confidence and real direction without the paralysis of trying to plan everything at once. And these 8 videos are not going to be random either. They are going to be built on everything you've created in this course so far. Your voice, your point of view, your audience understanding, your offer, so that every single one of them serves a purpose in your content ecosystem. So I want to introduce you now to the 4 content categories that I use to build every content plan I create for myself and for my channel and for my clients. These 4 categories work together to do the complete job of a YouTube channel that brings you clients. Each one does something different. Together they build trust, attract the right people, demonstrate your expertise, and convert viewers into buyers. Category 1 is identity content. These are the videos that show who you are, your point of view, your values, your story, your unpopular opinions maybe, your takes on the industry that you're in. And this is the content from Module 1 that you brought to life on camera. It's the most personal category and often the most uncomfortable to create. And it's also the category that builds the deepest connection and respect from your viewers and the strongest following. And that's why you cannot avoid it. Examples of identity content are the one thing I believe about business growth that most coaches won't tell you, or why I walked away from a $250,000 business and what it taught me, or the mistakes I see smart coaches making that kills their YouTube growth. These videos do not teach a framework or give tactical advice. They reveal who you are and what you've been through. And revealing who you are is the fastest way to find the people who are meant to work with you because they resonate with you and your story. Now, category 2 is audience pain content. These are the videos that speak directly to what your ideal client is struggling with at, if you remember, level 1 and level 2 awareness from the framework in Module 3. They name the problem, they validate the experience, and reframe it in a way that creates movement. So examples of audience pain content would be something like why your YouTube channel isn't growing even though you're doing everything right, or the real reason you keep attracting the wrong clients, or why coaches burn out on content creation and what to do about it instead. These videos are your highest volume content, the ones most likely to be found through search, most likely to reach new people who've never heard of you before, and they are your top of funnel. They bring people into your world. Category 3 then is methodology content. These are the videos that teach your framework, your approach, your specific way of solving the problem. They demonstrate expertise, they build credibility, and show your ideal client have a real structured approach to getting them the results they want. So examples of methodology content would be the 5 reasons coaches don't get clients from YouTube and the framework I use to fix all 5, or how I help coaches find their voice on camera in 3 steps, or the own your voice method, why identity comes before strategy every single time. These videos do the work of pre-selling you. By the time someone has watched 2 or 3 of methodology videos, they understand how you think, they trust your approach, and the step to working with you feels logical rather than scary, because it would be the next best thing to do after watching those videos. Now, category 4 is offer content. And these are the videos that speak directly to your offer, not in a salesy promotional way, but in a way that addresses the specific objections, questions, and hesitations your ideal client has about taking the next step. So examples of offer content would be what actually happens inside Own Your Own Voice, Create Your Paycheck, or is this program right for you? An honest breakdown, or what my clients say about working with me and what I wish I'd known before I started. And these videos feel vulnerable to make because they're explicitly about you and what you sell, but they perform extraordinarily well with warm audiences because people who already know you and trust you but haven't yet taken that step to buy, they answer all their unspoken questions that are keeping people on the fence. So here's how you build your 8 videos. You do 2 identity content videos, 2 audience pain content videos, 2 methodology content videos, and 2 offer content videos. That's it. 1 from each category, twice. 8 videos that collectively cover every stage of your buyer journey. And you want to speak to multiple levels of audience awareness and demonstrate who you are, who you serve, how you work, and how to take the next step with you. So now let me walk you through how to generate the specific ideas within each category, because write 2 identity videos is not quite actionable enough on its own. So for your identity videos, go back to your workbook from Module 1, your unpopular opinions list, your 3 chapters exercise, your superpower statement, your point of view statement. Every single one of those is a video idea. Pick the 2 that feel most urgent for you right now, and those are your video ideas for identity videos. For your audience pain videos, go back to your language harvest from Module 3, your 2 a.m. questions, your ideal client journey map, and look at the level 1 and level 2 of awareness content you identified as missing from your channel. And pick 2 most pressing problems, the one your ideal client is most actively searching for answers for right now, and those are your audience pain videos. For your methodology videos, go back to your framework from Module 4. Pick 2 stages of your framework and build a video around each one. What happens in that stage, why it matters, what goes wrong when people skip it, and how you approach it. Those are your methodology videos. For your offer videos, pick 2 angles that address the most common questions or objections you hear from potential clients. What do people want to know before they decide to work with you? What makes them hesitate? Answer those questions on camera, and those are your offer videos. And you can also do case studies for your offer videos and then talk about your offer and how it works or how you got them the results. So case study videos are great for offer videos as well. So that's 8 videos built entirely from the work you've already done in this course. None of them are random. All of them serve a purpose. Together, they create a complete, coherent first month of content that builds trust, attracts buyers, and moves people towards your offer. So here's your workbook exercise for this lesson. Using the 4 category framework, generate your 8 video ideas. For each one, write the following: the title, which is using your audience language that you learned from Module 3. Then the category, so whether it's identity video, audience pain point video, methodology video, or offer video. Then the core message, so 1 sentence that captures the single most important thing about this video, the outcome that they will get. And then the awareness level, so the level 1, 2, or 3 from Module 3 framework. Oh, and then after that, CTA. So which of your 3 CTA styles will you use in that video, and what specifically will you say? When you've written all 8 ideas, look at the list and choose one. The one that feels most important to you to say right now, the one that's like glowing, that one is the most true for you, the most needed, the most yours. And that is the video we are going to script in lesson 2. Great, you've chosen your video. Now we're going to script it. Yay! And before we get into the mechanics of how to do that, I want to say something about what scripting is and what it isn't. Because I know some of you have a complicated relationship with the word. Scripting is not about Scripting does not have to be about writing out every single word you're going to say and then reading it on camera. That approach, the word for word read, is almost always visible to your audience, and it creates a slight but unmistakable distance if you don't have the skill of reading from a teleprompter, and it creates a distance between you. And the energy of reading is different from the energy of someone speaking, and viewers feel it even though they can't name it. So what scripting is in this sense is the way I use it and teach it is building a clear, detailed map of what you want to say so that when you press record, you're not figuring out the content in real time. You know exactly where you're starting, where you're going, what the key points are, and how you're landing the plane. That clarity in your mind translates into clarity and confidence on camera. You can script, of course, at whatever level of detail works for you. Some people write out full sentences for the parts that really matter, like the hook, the key reframes, the CTA, and then use bullet points for the rest. Some people work entirely from detailed bullet points. Some write a full word-for-word script and then read it enough times that it becomes kind of internalized rather than read it online. So you need to find what works for you and use that, and that will evolve over time and will evolve for different styles of videos as well. So if you do a more vlog style video, behind the scenes video, you're probably gonna speak more naturally and just have a few bullet points. If you're gonna do like a lesson or a lecture, you probably will have a more scripted plan in advance. But what I'm giving you in this lesson is the framework for building the script in general, the architecture that makes sure your video works regardless of how you choose to fill it in. And the framework that I use is the 8-question framework. And you've heard me mention this in earlier modules, and now we're going to use it properly. So the 8-question framework was actually developed by Brian Miller and adapted through my own teaching. And the architecture of a video that connects, builds trust, and delivers value and converts is what you need. And every question represents a stage your viewer moves through as they watch your video. And every stage does a specific job. And together they create a complete experience. And you want to do the 8 questions in order. You can leave some out if you want to, but I would do them in order because they are thought of and planned in a certain order. So I'm gonna walk you through the 8 questions, and then we're gonna map your chosen video onto them. So question 1, is this relevant to me? So this is your hook, the first 15 to 30 seconds, the moment your viewer decides whether to keep watching or scroll. So your hook needs to do one thing: make your ideal client feel directly addressed, not a general audience, them specifically, in the language of their actual experience. The best hooks name a specific situation, feeling, or problem in the exact terms that your ideal client would use to describe it. So for example, if you've been posting on YouTube for months and wondering why nobody's inquiring, this video is for you. If you know you have something important to say, but every time you sit down to film, you feel like you sound like a fraud, stay with me. Notice those hooks don't start with, "Today I'm going to teach you this," or "Welcome back to my channel." They start in the viewer's world, not yours. They create an immediate "that's me" response in the right person. Okay, so that's question 1. Question 2, does this really matter to me right now? So this is where you show the cost of the problem, not in a manipulative, fear-mongering way, but in an honest, clear articulation of what staying stuck in this situation is actually costing your viewers, because most people ignore this. This stage is important because most people have a background awareness that something isn't working without a clear sense of urgency about fixing it. So showing them what staying stuck costs in time, money, energy, missed opportunity, creates the motivation to keep watching and ultimately take action. So you want to keep this brief, 1 to 2 minutes at most, and always frame it with genuine empathy. You are not trying to make them feel bad. You are trying to help them see clearly why this matters enough to address it right now, meaning why they should stay in this video right now. Then question 3, why should I listen to you? This is your credibility moment. This is where your professional opinion comes in, like where your experience gets exposed. And notice where it sits, third, not first. This is one of the most important structural insights in this whole framework. Most coaches introduce their credentials at the start of a video. Hi, I'm Alexa, and I've been doing this for 10 years, and I've helped hundreds of clients, and yada, yada, yada. Your viewer doesn't care yet. They haven't decided you're relevant to them. So credentials before relevance is noise, and they won't hear it. But here at question 3, after they felt addressed by your hook and understood why this matters, then they want to know why they should learn from you. And now the credibility lands. Now the story of how you know this, why you're qualified to speak about it, what you've lived or built that makes you worth listening to, now it creates trust rather than just filling time. So keep your credibility moment brief and story-led, not a CV, right? 1 or 2 specific pieces of evidence that shows that you know what you're talking about, told as experience, not as achievement. And then we move to question 4, which is, why can't I keep doing what I'm doing? And this is where you close all the alternatives that your viewer is thinking at that moment. because your viewer at this point might be thinking, okay, this sounds relevant and you seem credible, but is this really necessary? Can't I just keep doing what I've been doing, maybe with a few adjustments? And your job in this stage is to show them empathetically, not harshly, but why the current approach isn't going to get them where they want to go. Why more of the same will produce more of the same. Why the small tweaks that they've been making aren't addressing the actual problem. This stage validates the frustration they've already been feeling, and it names the approach they've already tried that haven't worked. And it creates the opening for the paradigm shift that comes next. So question 5 after this is, what's your solution, right? What are you proposing to them? And this is your reframe moment, your paradigm shift for them. The moment where you offer a new way of seeing the problem, a new perspective, that shift that makes everything that comes after it feel possible. So notice that you're sharing a mindset shift first, not a strategy or tactic. So for example, the reason your content isn't converting isn't your strategy. It's that you haven't decided to be yourself on camera yet. Or the reason you keep attracting the wrong clients isn't your niche, it's that your content is speaking to everyone instead of someone. The reframe is the heart of your video. It's the insight that your viewer will remember and share and thank you for. It's that aha moment. I never thought of it that way. And it's usually the thing from your unpopular opinions list, the thing you actually believe that changes how they see their situation, that you usually want to keep quiet. So after the reframe, you can then go into the tactical content, the how, the practical steps, the specific advice, but always lead with the shift first, the paradigm shift first, because that way they will buy into your tactics, because you gave them an aha moment that changed the way they think about something, gave them a new perspective, and now they're paying attention. Now they're like, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. I've never thought about it this way. My ears are perked up, I'm listening. Because tactics without a paradigm shift are just instructions and they won't hear them nor remember them. A paradigm shift with tactics is so transformational, and it will encourage them to take action. Which question 6 is, what do I actually do? So this is the action step, and it's not 5 steps, not 10 steps. This is where many coaches give way too much away. They feel like they want to be generous and comprehensive and thorough, and so they end up giving their viewers so many steps or actions that they can take to fix the problem, and they end up doing nothing because it's overwhelming. So at the action step, you want them to take the action and get results. And overwhelm is the enemy of action. And action is what creates results, which is what builds the trust that eventually brings them back to you and brings them to buy from you. So give them one specific, achievable, time-bound action, something they can do today or this week that will create a real movement in the direction of the transformation you're teaching them. So make it so clear and so doable that they feel capable of starting immediately. And once they do it, they'll achieve some results and they'll want to come back and watch more of your content because you got them a result. Then question 7 is this really worth doing? So this is your motivation stage. This is where your viewer has the reframe, they have the action step, they have the strategies, the tactics, and now the inner voice arrives. The one that says, but will this actually work for me? I've tried things like this before. What makes this different? And you want to address that voice directly by painting a specific picture of what becomes possible when they implement what you've shared. So you want to use a client story if you have one, or real results, real specifics, real human experience of the transformation. And if you don't have client stories yet, you use your own story or simply describe the outcome in vivid, specific terms. So this stage is not about hype or overselling. It's about helping your viewer genuinely believe, based on evidence and honest description, that the action you've recommended is worth taking. So you're painting a future that is bright and happy because they took that action. That action leads to that life that they want. The last question, question 8, is what was this all about again? So this is your landing the plane. One sentence, maybe 2, that captures the core message of the entire video, because a lot of people forget what they've watched, right? So you're not going to give a summary of everything you covered, but the single most important thing you want them to take away from this video. Think of it as the sentence they'd use if they were describing this video to a friend. She basically said that safe content is costing you clients, and the only way to fix it is to decide to be yourself and share what you truly believe. That's the landing. That's the ending of your video. Simple, specific, memorable. And then after that, After that landing, you're inserting your CTA, the natural, confident invitation into the next steps with you if they're interested. And that is the complete 8-question framework. And I want you to notice something about it. It's not just a content structure, it's a trust building journey. By the time your viewer reaches question 8, they have felt addressed, understood, challenged, equipped, motivated, and clear. And that experience compressed into 10 to 15 minutes is what builds the kind of connection that converts your viewers into buyers. So here's your workbook exercise for this lesson. Take the video idea you chose at the end of lesson 1 and map it onto the 8-question framework. For each question, write the specific content you'll use in your video. Not necessarily word for word unless you want to do it that way, but clearly enough that you know exactly what you're going to say in each stage or each questions. Then, once you've mapped it, write your hook in full, word for word, because the hook is the most important, the highest leverage part of your video, and it determines whether people stick around. It's the moment that determines whether anyone watches at all, and it deserves the most care and the most precision. When your map is complete and your hook is written, you are ready to film. Not eventually, this week, before the momentum of this course fades and the daily demands of life crowd back in. Press record before you're fully ready. Great, I will see you in lesson 3. This is the final lesson of Get Paid to Speak, and I want to make it count. Not by adding more to learn, but by making sure everything you've built in this course has a real, sustainable home in your actual life. Because here's the thing about the courses. The insights are real, the frameworks work, the exercises create genuine clarity, and then you close the laptop, life resumes, and gradually, not all at once, but piece by piece, the momentum fades and the channel goes quiet, and 6 months later, you're wondering what happened to the version of you that finished this course feeling ready, inspired, and on fire. And I've seen this happen too many times, and it almost never happens because the person wasn't committed or didn't care. It happens because they didn't build a system. They relied on motivation and inspiration to keep them going. And motivation and inspiration are wonderful, but they are not reliable. They come and they go. A system stays. So this lesson is about your system, the specific, practical, repeatable process that keeps your channel alive and your content consistent. Not because you feel inspired every week, but because you've built the infrastructure that makes it happen whether you feel inspired or not, and that's the key. So let me start by saying something important about what a content system is not. A content system is not a complex machine. It's not a multi-step workflow involving 17 apps and a team of 3. Those systems exist, and for some people at certain stages of business when they make sense. But that is not what we're building here. What we're building is the minimum viable system, the simplest possible version of a content process that produces consistent, quality output without requiring you to spend your whole life on it. Because we all have lives. You have a business to run and clients to serve and a life to live. And your content system needs to fit inside that reality, not replace it. So the minimum viable system has 3 components: a planning rhythm, a creation rhythm, and a publishing rhythm. That's it. So let me walk you through each one. The planning rhythm is how you decide what to create. And based on everything you've built in this course, your 4 content categories, your 8 video framework, your audience understanding, you already have most of the inputs you need. The planning rhythm is just the regular, scheduled time you decide to turn those inputs into a concrete content plan. For most of my clients, the planning rhythm looks like this. Once a month, for 90 minutes, you plan your content for the coming month. You choose your video topics from your 4 categories. Make sure you have a mix across the month, so you're doing everything from each category. You write a working title for each one using your audience's language. You note the core message and the CTA, and you end the session with a clear, specific list of what you're creating that month. Nothing is left vague. Nothing is left to be figured out later. That 90 minutes of planning removes an enormous amount of friction that kills content consistency, because the decision of what to make is already made. You never sit down to film and have to figure out what to say. You already know, you just have to say it. So the creation rhythm is how you actually make the content. And as I mentioned, and in module 2, the approach that works best for almost everyone I know is batching. And here's what a simple batching rhythm looks like in practice. Once a month, ideally a few days after your planning session, so that the ideas have had time to settle, you take a creation day, or a 2.5 or 2 half days if a full day doesn't fit your schedule. And in that creation block, you do all of your scripting and all of your filming for the month. Scripting first, using the 8-question framework you now have, write or map out all 4 of your videos in the same session. They don't need to be word for word scripts unless that's how you want to work. They need to be clear enough that you can film without having to think about structure. Then give yourself about 20 minutes per video for the mapping. That's 80 minutes of scripting for a full month of content. Then film. You're already in the energy of creating. Your setup is already done. Your mind is already in content mode. Film all 4 videos back to back or with short breaks as needed. And a 10 to 15 minute video typically takes 30 to 40 minutes to film once you know what you're saying. 4 videos is half day of filming. When the filming is done, the hardest part is done. Everything after, editing, thumbnails, descriptions, scheduling, can be done in smaller pockets of time throughout the month. It can be batched separately. It can be delegated as well if you have that support. But the part that requires your voice, your energy, your presence, that's done in one focused block once a month. That is the creation rhythm. One planning session to get all the ideas that you want to create, and one creation day where you create all those ideas. You write them and you film them. And that's it. And then next is the publishing rhythm, and that's how you get the content out consistently. And this is simpler than most people make it. So decide on your frequency. Once a week, twice a month, both are viable for building a channel that grows. Pick your publishing day, the same day every week or every fortnight. Schedule your videos in advance so that even if life gets complicated, the content still goes out. And protect your creation day in your calendar like you would protect a client call, because it is just as important to your business. And that's the complete minimum viable system: monthly planning, creation day, and publishing schedule. 3 decisions made once, executed separately, repeatedly, and it's simple enough that you can actually maintain it. But it's also robust enough that it keeps your channel alive and growing even in the busy months, even in the hard months, even in the months when the last thing you want to do is film a video. So now I want to address something that I know is sitting in the back of your mind. What about quality? What about SEO? What about thumbnails and titles and all the technical elements of YouTube growth? Those things matter. I'm not going to pretend they don't. And there is a whole layer of YouTube strategy, keyword research, thumbnail optimization, analytics, growth tactics, yada, 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 that sits on top of what we've built in this course. But here's the sequence that works. Voice first, systems second, tactics third. You build your voice, which was module 1 and 2. You understand your audience, which was module 3. You clarify your offer, module 4. You build your systems, module 5. And then once you are creating consistent content from a place of genuine clarity and authentic expression, the tactics accelerate what's already working. Tactics applied to unclear, inauthentic, inconsistent content produce very little results. Tactics applied to clear, authentic, consistent content production get much better results. And that is the sequence. And you have now done the foundational work that makes the tactics worth applying. I also want to say something about the ongoing support piece, because I want to be honest with you about what this course can and cannot do. This course gives you the foundation, the clarity, the framework, the system, the first month of content. And that foundation is real and it matters. And if you implement everything in these 5 modules, your channel and your business will change. But building a YouTube channel that consistently brings you clients is not a weekend project. It's a practice, a long game, something you build over months and years through consistently showing up, through iterating on what works, through staying connected to your why on the days when the results feel slow. And that kind of long game is much easier and much more enjoyable, mind you, when you're not doing it alone. The coaches I've watched that build the most extraordinary things on YouTube are almost never the ones who figured it out all by themselves in isolation. They're the ones who had a community around them, people who understood the specific challenges of building a purpose-led business on YouTube, people who could look at their content and give them honest, strategic feedback, people who were brave alongside them so that the bravery became contagious rather than effortful. And that is what I offer you in the YouTube Truth Rebels tribe. It's a community of coaches, consultants, healers, change makers, heart-led, purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are doing this work together, who are finding their voices and building their channels and growing their business in a space where that work is understood, celebrated, and actively supported. So if you felt at any point in this course that you want that you want to keep going with this work inside a community for accountability, for friendships, for growth, and around people that get it, and in an environment, a supportive environment, then I'd love to have you there. The details are in the description below, but for now, let's close this course properly. Here is your final workbook exercise. Part 1. Design your planning rhythm. What day of the month will you do your content planning session? How long will you give yourself? Put it in your calendar now. For the next 3 months before you close this lesson, plan those days. Part 2, design your creation rhythm. What day or days will you batch your filming? What does your creation day look like in practice? Start time, break structure, how you'll prepare your space and your mindset. Put those days in your calendar now. And another tip on the creation days, if you split it into 2 days, which is actually what I do, I script everything one day and then I film everything the next day. So it gives me a little bit of breathing room, because doing so much creation in one day sometimes is very draining. So just to let you know that if you split it to 2 half days, you could script one day, then do client work the second half of that day. And the next day, when you wake up in the morning, if you're fresh in the mornings, then in the morning you could film and then have client work in the afternoon. Okay. Part 3, design your publishing rhythm. So how often will you publish, and what day will your videos go live? So you want to determine every Tuesday, Thursday, every Monday, Friday, every Monday, every Wednesday, whatever it is, determine that and know that you will schedule your videos every week at the same day, and write it down as a commitment so that you actually stick to it. Then part 4, write your sustainability plan for the hard months. When life is full and the fear is loud and you don't want to show up, what is your bare minimum? What do you need to get done? Is it just 1 video a week and you make sure you get that out and that's all that matters? Or is there something else? Like, what does showing up look like at its simplest? And write that down too, because that minimum is what keeps the channel alive when everything else is pulling at your attention. And we're always planning our business for ideal days, and we don't have ideal days. Life is hard. Life throws us curveballs all the time. So make sure you're prepared for that and you have a bare minimum of what you're going to get done each day in your business, so that you feel like you're moving forward even though life is making it harder for you. And then part 5, write a letter to yourself, 1 page, from the version of you that just finished this course to the version of you that you will be 6 months into implementing this course. And tell yourself what you know now, what you're committed to doing, and what you believe is possible, and what you'll do on the days when you want to quit. And keep that letter somewhere you can find it, because there will be a day, probably around month 3 or 4, when the growth feels slow and the effort feels high, when you need to read that letter and remember this energy that this course gave you and the feeling that you can succeed and you can do this. And when you do, I want it to remind you of exactly who you decided to be when you finished this course. And that's it. You finished. I don't want you to rush past that. You finished. You did the work. You showed up for every module and you did the exercises and you built something real in these 5 lessons, something that most coaches who've been on YouTube for years have never built, deliberately, that is. You know who you are on camera. You have practiced for showing up fully and consistently. You understand your ideal client at a depth that will make your content feel personal to the people it's made for. You have a clear offer, a named framework, and the tools to invite people into your work with confidence and integrity. And you have a plan of 8 videos, a system, a first month of content that is built around your truth and designed to bring you clients. That is not a small thing. That is the foundation of a YouTube channel that actually works, that will actually bring you business. And I want you to feel that before you close this course and go film your first video. I also want to say something honest about what comes next, because I've been doing this long enough to know that the gap between finishing a course and actually building something is where most of the real work and the real challenges live. And there will be days when you don't feel like filming, days when you watch your analytics and nothing seems to be moving, days when you post something brave and it feels like nobody cared, days when you compare your channel to someone who's been doing this for 5 years and wonder if it'll ever get better for you. On those days, I want you to remember something. The coaches who win on YouTube, they are not the ones who never doubt. They are the ones who doubt and show up anyway, who feel the fear and press record before it talks them out of it, who have a bad month and come back the next month because the mission matters more. Your voice matters. The specific, particular, irreplaceable perspective that you bring to your work that is not available anywhere else. There is no other version of you making this content. And the person who needs exactly what you have to offer, who is out there right now searching for someone who gets it in the way you get it, they are waiting for you to show up. So go film your first video today if you can, this week at the latest. Don't wait until it's perfect. Don't wait until you feel fully ready. You have everything you need right now to make something real. And if you want to keep building, if you want a community of people who are doing this brave, purposeful, identity-led work alongside you, come find us in the YouTube Truth Rebels tribe. The link is below. I would genuinely love to see you there and help you and support you there. Thank you for trusting me with this part of your journey. Now go make the thing and make a profit from your passion. Get paid to speak. See you in the next one. Bye for now.